My son and I sat there for 2.5 hours, locked in. I loved it a lot.
I'm just going to go stale. It was the cinematic equivalent of scoring that date with the supermodel who looks amazing, but ultimately has very little under the surface.
Nobody's going to do a better job at giving you a visual feast than Del Toro.
Guillermo Del Toro loves his monsters. Maybe he loves them a little too much.
I think you're dead wrong and need to repent and just shut up and listen.
In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for how they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm James.
I'm Joe.
And we are looking at Frankenstein, specifically 2025's Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo Del Toro and starring Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi, Mia Goth, and Christoph Waltz. And I'm sure it's not a big surprise to anybody, but we'll give a plot summary anyway. Dr. Victor Frankenstein, brilliant but egotistical scientist, brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both the creator and his tragic creation. So you have this tussle between these extreme characters. I think we're going to have potentially a tussle between extreme characters today. But we will get into what we thought. I'm curious, before this movie, Joe, where were you at with Frankenstein? Because you're a horror guy, but I'd also know you're a Wolfman guy. We've established many of these things on the show. Mm-hmm. Where is Frankenstein rated generally at any particular version prior to this that stood out to you or was kind of your go-to?
Yeah, a lot of Frankenstein movies. 1931, the OG film, Frankenstein. I love, my son loves it. It's just great for a lot of different reasons. Like, with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with De Niro.
Yes, Kenneth Branagh.
That one's really good. Seems to be obviously more in line with the book. And then, so I of course, as a thinker, not that I'm a good thinker, but as one who likes to think, as a theologian, this is one of the most overflowing stories to discuss theology. Yeah, there's just, It's so packed. So there's a lot to like. And some of those movies were just kind of goofy and silly. Some are brilliant. And so I think it's a mixed bag. But I would say for me, it would go of the Universal monsters, I would say Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy. But if I'm putting Creature of the Black Lagoon in, then he comes after Wolfman.
Okay. Yeah. I would probably put Frankenstein, traditionally, I've probably put him under Dracula. So, but not too far off the mark there as well. I grew up on less of a fan of the Universal version and more of a fan of the Hammer horror version with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee as the monster, which has a great framing device because it starts with him. He's confessing to a priest because they're about to put him on the guillotine because he's been convicted of these murders and he's trying to say, no, it's the monster, and kind of recounts the tale. But of course, he's incriminated a lot in the goings on of this tale. Kind of whatever version you've got, we've got a very compromised man. And so, and so at the end, of course, the priest. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil the ending for that. That version's worth seeing. I think for certain reasons, I think it's worth seeing any version. Yeah. Obviously, he's been in a lot of movies, and some of the sequels that have the Universal sequels and even the Hammer sequels were not all that great. But this version, obviously the newest. Let's go ahead and give it some popcorn ratings. So theology, I think I'm going to agree with you when we hit that in a minute. But just from the popcorn movie perspective, no theology, would you say for you, was it stale? Was it fresh? Or is this like buttered and salted, top tier, 4-star? Where are you sitting with this version?
This is where I struggle with your rating system because 3 options is not enough for me. I like a 5-star rating, and with half stars included. So really the 10. I need 10 points. I'll tell you,
you can put it between those. You can put it.
I rated it 4 stars, I think.
All right.
So I would put it. It's not a perfect movie in my mind, but I really was impressed. I was really impressed. My son and I sat there for 2.5 hours, locked in, and we're very satisfied. We really enjoyed it. Loved it a lot. So I'm going to say. In between.
Fresh and buttered and salted. Sounds like it's buttered, maybe not salted. Or salted not buttered. There you go.
Maybe, I don't butter my popcorn, so maybe buttered but not salted. That's probably where it would be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this is where we're going to differ. So this is think back to growing up as a kid on Siskel and Ebert and some of my favorite episodes where they would disagree vehemently. Sometimes they totally agree too, but this for me, as much, I'm going to stick to my guns. I was about to go between a ranking. I'm just going to go stale. I'm just going to go for broke here. I thought Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein had a lot of press before and even after it's out now, talking about how true it stays to the book. And nothing could be farther from the truth. And we can talk about that in a minute, but to me, it was the cinematic equivalent of scoring that date with the supermodel who looks amazing, but ultimately has very little under the surface. Like all things Del Toro, this is totally lavish and extravagant. It's never boring to look at. But his characterizations, I felt, flatten Shelley's three-dimensional characters into two-dimensional caricatures and left me feeling kind of shallow. So I can praise, I'm not going to disparage all the ingredients of the film, but to me it felt like it's still all those ingredients that were good, but with the bad, for me it was like a souffle that just kind of caved in at the end. It just did not work. But if we're talking theology ratings, I can't deny I can't say it's diluted, I can't say it's carbonated, I have to say it's still cup runneth over. I've got to be generous because even though I felt this version is shallow, it still strikes enough of the right notes to open up doorways to innumerable conversations. So I'm going to go stale, but then I'm going to say, okay, there's a lot to talk about. I'm guessing cup runneth over for you on theology as well.
I mean, for you, I think it'd be like cup running over, but it'd be like your third choice of a beverage. It'd be like, it's, I guess, but it's not really what I wanted. I wanted my Diet Coke, and I got, Sprite or something. I don't know. Yeah, definitely run it over because the essential concepts, it doesn't matter how badly, and I don't think this was badly done, but it wouldn't matter to me if it was really badly done. The storyline itself is just too full with everything from nature of man, where does the soul, sinful nature, who is God, all that stuff.
Creator, creation. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to debate you and agree with you in various portions. But before we get there, this episode of Popcorn Theology is brought to you by B. Claus Charity, an organization known for their unique approach to gift giving. This charity partners with local artisans and craftsmen to create a one-of-a-kind personalized gift for children in need. So B. Claus Charity believes that through the gift of creation, that's appropriate, every child can be seen, valued, and celebrated. And so please visit their website at bclauscharity.com to donate. Donations are processed through Canada Helps, an organization with very low fees, allowing your donation to go as far as possible. So help share the gift of creation with a child in need this Christmas at bclauscharity.com. Again, that's BECLAUS charity.com. And also, like and share this episode, of course, with your friends. If you like what you hear, broaden the conversation. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We've been growing in subscribers and can't wait to grow that. Follow us on social media, Facebook and such. And if you want to become a patron saint, as Christoph Waltz's character funded and helped the doctor in this Frankenstein version, you can help fund this Freaky Frankenstein Patchwork podcast. And so you could donate to that and become a member, vote on future episodes. We got a Patreon film episode coming up, and tell us what to watch and we will watch it for you. So give you control, although we will not transplant your brain into one of our hosts' brain. But otherwise, things will be good to go.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane!
Cinemagogue, the marvelous era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagogue book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, The Marvel Us Era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions.
Hey, this is David, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's probably because you're interested in theology or movies, or best of all, both. And that means that you're our kind of people, sharing common interests with our listeners and viewers as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's a big part of what we're all about here. So for more information on advertising with us, contact feedback@popcorntheology.com.
So, Joe, I'm going to drop the spoiler warning and let's dig a little deeper, but let's talk about the popcorn stuff that we liked about this episode or this film installment of the Frankenstein mythos. What stood out? Give everybody what you loved first. We get everybody filled up with the good before I start taking pot shots at it.
Right on. Well, you've already touched on it. Nobody's going to do a better job at giving you a visual feast than Del Toro. They'll do as good, but like Del Toro, from the costumes to the sets, I mean, he built the ship. It wasn't CGI. He built the lab. Like, those are sets. Like, that's old school movie making, which I love. It looked, I mean, I really appreciate his direction, the cinematography. And to be honest, it's probably, even in my estimation, and I like the film, the best part of the film is the way that he directed and shot the thing. It's visually a masterpiece. It's the kind of thing that I could put up on a big screen and just let it run without any sound while I'm working. It's just, it looks great. So
I think I might like it better that way. No, go on.
Yeah. And I do like the story. I do like the characters or caricatures, even if we want to go that way. I think some people are caricatures in their lives. So to me, it's not that much of a problem. And honestly, like, I haven't heard anybody say it's faithful to the book. I've never heard that. And I went in not knowing anything other than this was long. That's all I knew. Del Toro, and it was long. And I don't love all of Del Toro's stuff. He does stuff that's just not for me. So I wasn't sure, but I wanted to like it. And we've talked about that before. I go in wanting to like something.
Wait. So what Del Toro's selections are there likes, don't like? Off the top of your head?
Pan's Labyrinth is great.
Yep.
Loved Pan's Labyrinth.
Agree with you
he
there.
Does some kid stuff that's cool for kids. I don't, it's not my thing.
Blade 2?
Blade 2 is good. I liked some of the cabinet stuff.
Yeah, that was hit and miss.
Shape of Water was like just I just think dumb. But so I'm not a huge fan of his films. I do think he's very talented. He's the kind of guy that I think you or I would both love to have. Like, can we just hang out with the afternoon and in his house and have some cigars and look at all of his cool stuff and talk about movies? That would be great. I would love it. So yeah, but the visual, the basic storyline. I liked the way that he set it up. You had the prelude, which actually happens at the end. They give you the prelude. And it gives, especially people that maybe don't know, gives you monster action right on the front of the movie, which was great. And I did love that the way he framed it. He's like, oh, well, you're going to have Victor Frankenstein tell his story. And then the monster comes on and the monster is telling his story. And the fact that, the monster like was intelligent and learned to speak, that is closer to the book than the 31 Frankenstein by miles.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe people are picking up on some of that, but I really liked that it told those two stories in that way.
What was there a moment where you just felt like this is it? Like this, okay. You talked about you and your son getting locked in. Was there just the opening scene? Was there a moment where it just landed and you're like, oh, yeah, this
that opening, I think they called it the prelude. It was exciting, real, magnificent to look at. The acting was great, and the monster was legit scary. So I think we were just locked in on a visceral level, on a visual level, and then you're telling the story, and I'm like, okay. And probably when I realized Frankenstein's going to tell his side of the story, which I thought was fantastic. I love that. I love that the monster isn't pure monster. He isn't just a blob of animated flesh. He isn't he's not a zombie, but he's not a childlike, Frankenstein like in 31, where he doesn't really have much of a personality.
Fire bad, yeah. Kind of.
Which I love. I love that for what it is. But this is more complex and interesting.
All right. Well, I can't argue with some of it, certainly, but we'll shift into my rant, I guess. Set design, wonderful. Costumes, wonderful. Cinematography, excellent. And acting, for the most part, was top-notch. I think I'm a little iffy on Mia Goth from other movies, but I also didn't like the portrayal they had of Elizabeth, so I don't know if my thoughts about her are her problem or my feeling with the character that they had her play. Right. Practical effects, as you're talking about, are all great. Yeah. But I watched it, even watching it a second time. The second time I went in, I know this isn't faithful to the book. How do I feel? The CGI took me out, though. The CGI I felt was terrible. I mentioned Blade 2 earlier. I felt the CGI was about as good as Blade 2 back in the early 2000s. The sheep and wolves look fake.
Yeah, I know.
There's a moment where he climbs up on the tower and to put up the spire, and which just felt ridiculous too. You could have CGI'd in anything there, and they have him like there's no safeguards. Like he would just walk out with. He had a whole team and a crew there, and they didn't build a safe scaffolding to go up. There were little things like that
for sure.
And what bugged me about the Victor's Tale and the Monster's Tale, and I watched a little bit of the documentary too, and even the way Del Toro talks about he's getting at it, he's like, well, I wanted to see each of their perspectives. I didn't really feel like the Victor, it felt like it said it was each person's tale, but then it was just an objective person view. Because you see scenes where, like you see the monster, it's the monster's tale, but he leaves with Elizabeth, and then you see Victor interact with his brother. Well, the monster wouldn't have seen that. It felt like a linear story, and they stuck in that it was different perspectives, but it never felt like a different perspective. I felt like a perspective tale would give me Victor with a little spin, and then there's never any spin. Victor looks terrible even in his tale. So I was a little confused by that watching it again. But and you already mentioned this. So one of my complaints, a BBC reviewer was talking about it too. Lordy's just too pretty. Frankenstein should not. Like Nosferatu, you and I agreed on that much more. Nosferatu's how it's done. They took a hideous creature and took it next level. I felt like.
You mean the monster is too pretty?
The monster's too pretty. Yeah, I mean it's like he looked like he had some patchwork coloration, but he looks most scary at the beginning, like you're talking about, because he's so covered up. He's covered. You got the hood covering. You don't know what's going to be under there. When it gets to the actual creation, it's like, all right, this is like this is like if you had Dracula look like Edward Cullen. This isn't Twilight. I don't want the pretty boy that just sort of has some lines on his face. I felt that was bothersome. But then we get into the stuff where I have to admit, part of it's just, even in the documentary, I think it's the guy that plays William was talking about, it's just so true to the book. Like, dude, William was 5 years old in the book. Like his dad remarries and there's a new child. Like it's 5-year-old child. And he wasn't lusting after his brother's betrothed. Elizabeth was his fiance. Elizabeth did not fall in love with the creature. Victor Frankenstein, I expected Oscar Isaac to grow a mustache and start twirling it. Because it's like he's evil in every way. I'm lusting out. I want my brother's wife or future wife. I torment Mike. In the book, he abandons his creation, but he doesn't torment it and beat it. Yeah. And it's not just a bad extension of his. By the way, his father, Victor's father, was not a wicked man in the book either. And then he frames the monster for the murder he committed. Then he's the one that shoots Elizabeth when in the book it's the monster that kills her. It's just like, and then I felt like the movie was so overwrought. It then didn't even trust the audience. They have to have his brother, as he's dying, say, "No, Victor, you are the monster," just in case anybody hasn't got the picture yet. So it's like, oh,
that was bad.
I felt. And I appreciated that, unlike Shape of Water, they didn't have the romance with the monster go as far as the romance with the monster goes in The Shape of Water. But it's like, man, why do we have to have... I felt like that's Edward Scissorhands, not Frankenstein. If you want to have the innocent creature that the girl falls in love with, that's a different book. Like, that's just a different story. I feel like Guillermo Del Toro loves his monsters. Like, I'm starting to think maybe he loves them a little too much.
Yeah. Well, I think it would even be fair to say that it seems like he loves his monsters more than the story. You know, for my part, though, where I think you're dead wrong and need to repent and just shut up and listen. By the way,
bring it.
When I argue with my friends, like we will have yelling arguments only about things that aren't important, things that we don't actually care about. We like to get into it.
That's right.
And then even when it is something a bit more substantial, like a movie, we love to argue. So like, I love that we get to disagree on something. And who knows, I might change my mind. I don't think it's fair to give a movie a low rating because it isn't the movie you would make.
No, I get it. Yeah.
I think that is way immature for people to do. And we all have a tendency to react to some movies that way. I got to make myself take a step. I go, okay, I would have done it differently. But when I hear a great preacher, I would have preached that thing very differently. And I would have liked mine more probably. But that was a great sermon, right? And I feel like when I watch a movie, like I would have done it differently. That's different than saying like, oh, there are some problems, there are some deficiencies. And so I don't let that impact my score. And I also don't let, say, like adaptation. There are about 60 adaptations of the movie.
Probably more than that, yeah.
Well, there's about 60 proper adaptations. There's hundreds if you're just talking about the monster.
Yeah.
So over 400. So we've got a lot of adaptations. And I don't think any of them are super faithful to the book. One seems closer in the ones that I've seen.
I kind of hoped they rewrote it a little bit in this movie when he actually confronts Victor, which was another problem that felt a little awkward. And that's why I watched it a second time. It's like, all right, I'm going to watch it again. I know it's not like the book. I'm just going to watch it as a movie. The second time is like, well, now the CGI is really bugging me.
Yeah.
Now I still feel like these characters could be three-dimensional. There's weird choices. I don't get, like, it felt forced to have her have this like sudden affection for like magical affection for the creature. I don't get her. I'm not getting the version of Elizabeth or where she's coming from. It feels like a Del Toro pushing an idea versus the story feeling like it earned it.
Sure, that's fair.
But yeah, I can't deny it's hard not to compare it. Like De Niro was a great monster. Kenneth Branagh was a great Victor Frankenstein. Helena Bonham Carter, great Elizabeth. Like that version to me, that got the book well. And it starts with the framing device of the boat on both sides. It's one of the few that kind of works with. If people haven't seen the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein 1994 version, I get how they could watch this and they could say, oh, this feels the most faithful. Sure, compared to lumbering, stupid Frankenstein.
Yeah.
All right, I get that it's closer. But then I was like, well, guys, there's one that's even closer.
Right.
If you want real, if you want authentic with one small narrative diversion, because they do throw in a little bit of the bride. They do something else with the bride a little bit in Kenneth Branagh's version, just to give you a flavor of kind of the Bride of Frankenstein. Right. So they have a little detour, excursus, and then they come back to the main story. Other than that, it's just a great faithful adaptation. I just felt I enjoyed the times when the creature was at the cabin.
Yeah.
With the folks, cool. Even though the CGI mice and rats looked fake too, but it just that's where I felt like it was strong. And Oscar Isaac's performance was great. I just felt like they had him play, and it's like he could not do anything. He could not be a complicated man. He had to be wicked in every way, and that's like, what? Does he have to be bad in every way? Couldn't you have everybody be a little more complicated or nuanced? As a fan, I enjoy Empire Strikes Back, but I lean toward Blade Runner. Like when you take a story that was complex like Frankenstein and kind of overly simplify it, it's just, I guess that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
It feels shallow to me. It feels like even though it's changing all the characters, fine, but he could have changed all the characters and even motivations and have the brother be old instead of 5 years old. That's fine. I never even felt like I really knew the brother either. I felt like there was some shallow characters and a weird emphasis on the monster, which at what point do you change the monster or the crux of the narrative to where it just doesn't feel like, well, why did you call it Frankenstein? And I feel like it's almost verging there for me in certain, which we talk deeper theology stuff, but
yeah, I think that because I expected Del Toro to do his thing, I wasn't expecting it to be anything more than a scientist creates a human, making himself God and making this create whatever. Let's just see what he does with it. So that didn't pose any real problems for me. I don't see Victor as an entirely evil person, but he is a megalomaniac. He is, I know people like that guy. That guy's not that much of a caricature. I know people like him. And they destroy lives, not just their own oftentimes. So I definitely, Del Toro said he wanted this guy to be more of a rock star than a scientist. Like, he's really honest about it. And it's like, well, you did that. He's a scientist, but, and in many ways, he's riffing on the broad concept of the Frankenstein story more than anything, right? Like the fact that he's doing lightning and stuff, that's not in the book. Like, that's totally just from 31. So I kind of anticipated that he was going to be doing his thing. All CGI is bad unless it's inanimate objects, or maybe a dinosaur can look real if we even think they looked like that. But it's like, I'm never a fan of it. It's got to be so minimal. And for a guy that wanted to do it a certain way, I feel like there would have been better ways to do it. You can hire trained wolves and wolf dogs to do stuff. So let's do that. Let's go back. Go back to the 80s, and when you have to fight a big bear. Anyway, so
Well,
yeah, I get that. I also wanted to say that like there are problems with some of the dialogue. Oh, I was going to say this. What would happen if you could do this? If you could take the parts of a person and give him or her life. All the theological questions come in with that. But one of them would be, and it relates to some, like, why is the monster pure? Well, because is he even human? Maybe that's the answer. Like, if he's not human, if he's learning, he's conscious, but like, what is he? That perhaps because he didn't have the sin nature, and he certainly didn't have nurture to help it along. So worst case scenario, he had a sinful nature, but no time for it to really be nurtured and developed. So he would have been less corrupt in that way. I'm just trying to think of in Del Toro's mind or mindset how it could make sense. But that's how I worked around some of that.
Well, so I guess here's where I think his problem is, because, and I may be projecting some of my dislike. I maybe carry over from Shape of Water, which we talked about a little bit. It seems like he's in this path now where it's like, I want to make these monster movies, but in the monster movies, all my monsters are wholly innocent. The quote unquote, the creatures are wholly innocent. And it's all that bothered me about Shape of Water, because like, okay. And this is where I'm going to push into some cultural tropes. What bugged me was it seemed like it was carryover of pushing a little bit of the agenda that I saw in Shape of Water. And instead of Victor having a good father, which complicated, then you want to talk about nature, nurture. So like, well, he had good nurture, but yet he's got this dark obsessive nature. Then he has the creature. I'd say you have a little more ping pong nuance to discuss there. Here it just felt like ultimately, again, traditional patriarchal fatherhood. Father figures are all bad. The feminine is good. The creature's wholly innocent. So we're going to make Victor's dad a bad dad because all fathers have to look like over authoritarian, oppressive people. Right. So then he's over oppressive. Poor Elizabeth is trapped in a world of men. It's just like, okay, really? We can't show me a few more scenes where to make me see that William's an earnest and good guy. Like, can we see one good male figure that isn't the monster, that isn't the creature in this whole narrative? Christoph Waltz is horrible. He's got syphilis. There was no virtuous male in the entire story except for the manufactured one. It's like, all right, show me some complications here. I would have liked a little more. And the only Elizabeth is mothering to the creature, and then apparently maybe some. It felt like something It felt like a narrative that we see a lot. Shape of Water did it worse, because like the traditional 50s dude was horrible. Monster was wonderful. It's like, all right, do we need to keep beating this drum? It feels like a narrative that's been done. So like, well, you're forcing a been there, done that narrative on this classic tale. I was like, that bugged me.
Fair. And I'll tell you why. I think people should listen to you on that very carefully, because we love stories that demonstrate that humans are evil. But when you're setting it up like, well, white cis males, as they like to say, they're the bad ones, or the rich person is the bad. No, we're all screwed. We're all evil. We're all damned. Okay. And there are different levels of that and different brightness of reflection of the Imago Dei in each of us. Yeah. And so, it is so clearly either it is coming from a perspective that cannot unlock itself from its own social, political, cultural perspectives, or worse, it's pushing an ideology. And that's something that I think we should be able to call out very blatantly, boldly.
Yeah. Well, that starts segueing us into more of the theological side of things. Anyway, we can enjoy a little theological soda and move into the cup runneth over portions of this too. I don't need to beat it to death with little nuances that bug me. And I do know that when something gets under your skin and you don't like it, it's a lot easier to see all the other flaws. So we'll leave it. I'd be curious what Popcorn Theology listeners thought. They love it, hate it, where are you guys at? Just on that surface level. But
how liberal are they? That's what tell us.
There you go.
I'm kidding, guys. Don't hate me. I'm joking.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did appreciate, I mean, just like even speaking biblically as we move into ideas, even though I felt like it was a trope that's been one-sided, like I would have, honestly, I think a better aspect of narrative could have been, what's the father problem we have right now in America? Absentee dads. Like I would have, rather than make him oppressive, it would have been interesting to see, to make it to inject a little topical into the narrative, make him just either have been the dad died or the dad was always abroad and he was raised alone. Then that would have made him a little straight, like what? Then you abandon your creature. Now you are still being just like dad, but maybe in a more I'm not opposed to some topical social relevance, right? I feel that the oppressive belt wielding father we've been there, done that. The problem right now is dads aren't in the home. That's absent father would have been a more interesting aspect for Victor to see then and then you perpetrate that on your creation. You're terrible, equally condemning. But I did appreciate though, even though I didn't like the one-sided Elizabeth seems to be perfect, I love the fact that we had a story where fidelity was uplifted and even fidelity and duty, which she talks about being trapped. There's obviously a little temptation in a few directions. And she's like, I've made my choice. And she stands tall in that. And so the fact that we actually had a virtuous character, that's not a negative for all the other complaining about the tropes. Like as a Christian and someone who loves the idea of covenant and fidelity, first to God, but also then to relationships, spouse and family and church, like that, like there is something wonderful about seeing that just carried over. Like we're going to have a character that actually holds true, who can even lament, maybe she's even lamenting some of the standards of the culture she's stuck in, but she's still willing to walk the road that she's dedicated or is going to be faithful to. I can't deny, like there's something nice I can say about even the portrayal of her character, because often you don't get that. Right. I'm going to run off with the creature. I'm going to run off with Victor. It's like, well, the only time she runs off with the creature is because she's bleeding out. So the creature takes her off to help her in her death throes. That there was no sense of going with your heart instead of necessarily duty or covenant. So I was like, what? You don't get that in stories every day. That was actually refreshing.
Yeah, that was good. And I think that, like, I was afraid she was going to run off with Victor. I'm watching the movie going like, okay, well, I don't like where this is going. But I get the impression, again, this is from a guy who likes the movie quite a bit. I get I could be wrong. But sometimes, you see a preview for a movie and you went, oh, they came up with the title of this movie before they had a story. They had a title that worked and they put together this awful thing around it. I get the feeling that he has his monster fixation, but he also had an idea about Victor. He's like, Victor's going to be this kind of a guy. Well, how do you get that guy? Well, the easiest answer is, well, he had a tool for a dad who was oppressive and abusive. But I like what you said, because you get the same result if the dad is gone and the mother is indulgent. If she just indulges him and just gives him whatever you want, well, you can be whatever you want to be, without any consequences. You get that same toxic person who can't comprehend that you can't do whatever you want to do. And that would have been far more relevant. So I'm with you on that. I think there could have been some better choices made for characters and their development. I'm not bothered that Victor is what he is, but why is he that way? Again, you do want to be able to see the sympathetic side of like Christoph Waltz. By the way, any movie that I watch, if he's in it, it gets a star. No matter, it'll never be lower than once. If Christoph Waltz is in it, he's just too good for me. But I remember there was a famous thing where he said, he's playing I forget his name, but he's playing the Nazi in that Tarantino film, Inglourious Bastards. And somebody asked him, like, how did you play such an evil person in this way with all this nuance? And he said, he's not evil. And he wasn't suggesting that what the guy did wasn't evil, but I think at the time what he was saying was like, that was me, and that I had to embody this person. And as a human being, he doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as a guy on the side of right. And that's why you can see variations. And I didn't see the variations in Victor. It did seem one note, but it was like, again, you get the picture of a person or a character, oh, they're this way, and that's who they are. But then you learn more, so what helped here was like, okay, well, why is he that way? Well, his dad was that way. That does answer it. I can understand it. It's a little simple. It's a little neat and not particularly complex.
Well, they did manage. I felt like they made Victor a little too one note with kind of being the bad guy of the story. I felt like, and of course, that's coming from the fact that it becomes much more of a creation downward spiral together, a mutual eye for eye, tooth for tooth kind of problem. Part of that also is in the book, they meet. It's the second meeting on the wedding day. I like narratively, if you have sort of enemies that I think they don't even meet again. They don't meet until it's like 35 minutes, the last part of it's only like 30 minutes left of the film when they meet in the wedding room. So they delayed that interaction. Whatever. Maybe I'm just comparing it to the book. That's fine. But they do throw in one of the things the creature says. The only rage we see really that he has is toward Victor versus the way he takes it out on the world more in the novel. But he makes a comment, which I think is, you talk about reason why somebody's bad. They truncated it, but I got the whole quote from the book. It's worth, because I think it's a good theological dig in here, because it reveals, well, depending on your worldview, you're going to think differently about it. The creature says, I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. This is when he wants the bride. He wants a woman. He says, make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. I do know that for the sympathy of one living being, I would make peace with all. I have love in me the likes of which you can scarcely imagine, and rage the likes of which you would not believe. If I cannot satisfy the one, I will indulge the other. And that, biblically, I love exploring that, because I think there's a part of our modern world and secular world that thinks that that's the problem. That's the only problem of where evil comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Take away misery and everybody be good.
Right.
And biblically, I'm trying to tee up a golf ball for you to hit there. There's a lot wrong with that statement.
Right. No, if someone is suggesting that all sin, like racism, is learned, then who learned it first?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Like, all of the seeds of evil are in all of us.
Yeah.
They don't all bear fruit, but all those seeds are there. It's an internal me problem. And while I may not be racist, I am certainly prejudicial and angry at times about, whatever, anything. It's like, I may not be a person driven by jealousy, but I am a person characterized by envy, right? Which is slightly different, right? You could start to parse it out.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, I would say that certainly, not on the other hand, it complements the idea, because I've been thinking a lot about thankfulness, and I've been reading some of the old dogs on thankfulness. And so what I've been doing is figuring out oh, wow, the way I've been putting it is the absence of thankfulness leaves an abscess in its place that is an infection that spreads, right? And so it's not so much, oh, give me what I want and I will be good. But if I am thankful for all that God does give me, whatever that is, if I can recognize God's grace in me, then it mollifies the conscience, and it overcomes anger, and it silences complaint, and it does all of these things. Yeah. So there is a little bit of truth in the idea that the monster is saying, I could temper my anger if I had something, but the thing that you have is not just what you want. It's I think it's understanding who God is and what he has given you. So some parts of that make sense, but ultimately the big answer is no, that's wrong. Sin doesn't, my sinful response isn't anyone's fault out there. I can't blame my background, my neighborhood, my dad. I'm responsible for what I do. Nobody else is.
Well, yeah, the idea that I think virtue is probably better defined as when you were good in spite of your circumstances,
sure,
not in light of them. Bad circumstances made me a fiend. No, I had bad circumstances and I had choices on how to react to those circumstances. I think that's, again, I think culturally, I think there's a subset of people who are like, well, if we could just mollify it, if we could meet everybody's needs, which doesn't work because everybody's felt needs are going to go well beyond what they really need, is that somehow people will be good if we just meet if everybody's needs get met. It's like, well, no, being good would be, my needs aren't being met. What am I going to do? Am I going to rob my neighbor to meet my needs? Or am I going to find a way? Yeah. Am I going to humble myself? Yeah.
Angry and do not sin. Right. So there's a great example. And gratitude in particular, but other graces, other virtues actually control the anger. So that anger, unrighteous anger, is easily offended, even when there's sometimes no offense. It's slow to forgive. It seeks vengeance. But anger is tempered by an appreciation for the fact that, I've been forgiven of sin. So we know that it has those effects. But what the monster is really saying there is, what does he say? Make me happy and I will
be virtuous again.
What he means is make me angry and I will be satisfied. Because that's, I don't know if that's what he means, but that's the only way in which it works.
It makes me happy and I'll be satisfied.
Yeah. If you make me happy, I'll be satisfied for a time.
Yeah.
For the moment, I'll be satisfied. I'll be satiated. But no, you're not going to be virtuous. Because I think you're right. No, virtue is the quality of conduct that corresponds to the will of God. Yeah. That's how we would view it as Christians anyways, I think. Or in the secular world, they might at least say, well, it is the quality of conduct that measures up to universally agreed upon norms that would include suffering well and not retaliating in vengeance. So, I get it. I love when they explore that. And I don't expect Mary Shelley or Del Toro to understand all the ins and outs of theology. Let it rip, do your thing, and we're going to talk about it. It's great because it helps to have these conversations. Yeah. Because they're just, there are stories. There are stories that help us to think through. You do this, right? I was just teaching on this in my small group. the Puritans didn't just meditate on scripture. They meditated by making connections. And so in everything that they saw in their lives, whether it's the mirror or the clothes that they're wearing or the knife that they're using or the frog that they see on the street, they are making connections between the image that they're looking at and the truths that relate to that in one way or another that help them to flourish theologically and piously. And so movies give us all of that opportunity, all the material we could ask for.
Well, so is there anything else in particular? We talk about Cup Runneth Over. Is there, of the endless themes in Dracula, was there something in this one where you're like, okay, they nailed this aspect or other aspect? I mean, obviously, I could say we could go down a whole rabbit trail since they did change the narrative. Obviously, you can look at the sins of the father moving along and then being manifest in the son. I think that's part of it. If sins of the father be visited on the son, I think we see that happening. Or raise up a child in the way they should go. And obviously then if you take that the other direction, Proverbs, raise up a child in the way they should not go, and they will probably wind up repeating and being used. So it's obviously working out that theme. Was there anything else that it nailed as far as human nature or creation, creator? Was there something else you're like, oh yeah, they got this for me. They're scratching your itch.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't mention it earlier because I was talking too much already, but the sins of the father, explicitly given, right? Like it's not hidden. It's very clear. By the way, I did groan out loud when he said, "You are the monster." I did. I was like, "Oh, don't! Oh my gosh, that's cheesy." That was offensive. That was an offensive sin. That was cinematic. All right, holy cow, so embarrassing. Anyways, so that was big. I love in these stories with Victor Frankenstein, I love the ideas of what is a human, what is human nature, what does it mean to be made in God's image? And where is the soul? They ask that, right? Like where, in which one of these pieces was the soul? Those are actually deep questions. Those are good questions. What is the soul, and where does it come from? And you read the scholastics, and they'll parse it down. Well, technically, it comes through it has to come through the man's seed because and it's like, all right, not a good answer in my estimation, but a good question. I love all of that. Like, what is man? And also, like, what are the limits? Like, what constitutes a kind of blasphemy that isn't explicit in Scripture? Is taking the parts of other human beings and sewing them together and trying to reanimate it, is it blasphemy? I would argue it is. But why is it? I think that's a really good, like, what are we doing? Like, what are you trying to do? Motives don't necessarily make it right either, but I'm interested. Right. And he seemed to be driven by an idea and himself. He seemed to be driven by an idea that is interesting and an ego that is corrupt that led him to be the kind of guy that he is, Victor. Yeah. Whereas I don't see him trying to solve the problem of death. It didn't feel like that was really what he was doing.
No, we see the death of his mother, and I like other versions of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein very, very much draw out the idea that the trauma of that is what's driving him so much. And there's a little of, like, he seems distraught by that, but I don't feel like when we actually see adult him, that really is the driving motivation or concern anymore. It seems more, I want to prove I can do it to prove I can do it.
Yeah. I want to be better than my dad. Yeah. But he wasn't. He was worse. He was actually worse than his dad.
So, and we talk about, he seems, I mean, the idea of bringing back, you talk about being blasphemous, just building parts, it seems to take into its thought, at least from Victor's perspective, that the right lightning and animate, that ultimately that's a purely materialistic universe. Like there's no God involved. There is no impartation of soul. There probably is no soul. Like the animation of the spark is simply, there's flesh, no spirit. That seems to be the blasphemy of what he's talking about doing. Yeah. Could I imagine any world where if somebody did that, could God in his providence decide to infuse a creature like that with I guess technically he could. Why, I can't fathom. But then again, some ways where God works are inscrutable. So it's hard to imagine that he would just stick a soul into a creature that some man was trying to build out of his own hubris.
Right. And again, we're talking about a horror movie here. Yeah. But what we say about how the nature of a human soul, and when you study theology, like, well, when does a human being have a soul? Is it at conception? Where is it before that? Like, those are real questions that systematic theologians work through and scholastic theologians work through. And when you get down to that level, we're making our best educated guesses. Okay. And I'm not even putting myself in that group. Like, I'm reading them going, Maybe.
Yeah.
The Bible doesn't say, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to listen to you. And so we could have it wrong, right? And, and it could just be that God creates the soul immediately upon certain conditions that we don't even understand for the individual. And so it's like, sure, everything's possible. God, if somebody sewed together a monster and figured out that God uses a certain wavelength of energy to impart, which is more like the book. The book is more like we don't really know what he did. He's kind of like, and then all of a sudden he was alive, right? So maybe he found the frequency that brought animation, and that's how God does it. And then he gave a soul, like, okay, fine. But the question itself is so important. The reason in, like, at least in the 31 version, they're like, this is blasphemy. The reason they had to drown out, like, I'm a god in the thunder, because it was, you can't say that, is because the general consensus was God gives life. He's the giver and the taker of life. You don't play. And they're transgressing into that area. So I love that in this story, even in Del Toro's story, is the question that isn't asked maybe very clearly, but it's certainly there is like, so what is so special about humanity? Like, why is this a big deal? Why would anybody care? Why were all of the men aghast? By the way, I do love his demonstration. Though it was kind of pathetic, it was still pretty inspired, right? Because it didn't last, but like with all the other doctors watching him, like that was a great scene.
Yeah.
I like that scene. But they were deeply troubled. And I don't think it was jealousy. It seemed to be like, this is wrong. What are we doing? That question about what is humanity, what is the nature of a man and a woman, you have to get down to theology. You have to get down to image of God. And then the responsibility that we have as his creatures made in his image. Man. And for me, that opens up all these discussions about ethics and racism and the value of human life as it relates to a lot of the other issues that are going on in our culture.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you could turn that around. I mean, you think about what has science shown us about what goes on in the womb that we didn't know 100 years ago. It's shown us a lot. And I think that there's some people, not even Christians, have found themselves a little bit aghast at our assumptions of, well, of course, it's not really alive or animate. Or there was even somebody like, well, we used to think at some point in development, a fetus could almost, I remember seeing some old textbooks, a fetus at some point could become any kind of animal. It's not uniquely like that, and so like at some place, is it even a human yet? At one point in the womb, does it become fully like a human? Like we didn't really know. We didn't have microscopes. Crazy. We didn't have ultrasounds. We didn't like the more technology we get, the more we're sort of aghast with our presumptions. That's like to your point, in a different sort of way, like the way Victor's science on that table surprised them. It's like, well, you let a lot of women who are concerned about what to do with their pregnancy, you let them look at an ultrasound, like you use science, and it's almost that same, wait, it's already this, it's already got that, it's already moving. Like what's happening? It's its own little creature in there. It's the same kind of, like, God in his providence through science has made us aghast at his creation in a variety of ways already. That's actually kind of a wonderful thing. To me, when I see that scene, I think, oh yeah, science has shown us a lot about our understandings of life, death, and conception, and humanity, and what the human is that we didn't know centuries ago.
And how are you not Victor Frankenstein? If after you see, this might upset some people, but how are you not Victor Frankenstein torturing the monster when you see the child in the womb that responds to pain and all kinds of stimuli?
Yeah.
Who's clearly made in the image of its maker. Yeah. And you decide, you know what? It doesn't count because it doesn't have a soul. It's not yet.
It's so just like, an it. It's just an it. That's what Victor insists on, right?
Victor Frankenstein. That's what that is. That's why this story, in its broadest sense, is so powerful, because it taps into these issues about the meaning, value, nature of life and humanity.
Yeah. Well, this movie I'm not sure what to make of it. On one hand, I felt like it was sort of forced, but the more I've been thinking about it, the more it's interesting is they force a conversation at that dinner table between Victor and Elizabeth and she goes off on a little tirade about war. Mm-hmm. And ultimately it's like, well, I'm not sure if I agree with her fully, because she talks about ideas and action. Like, so sometimes a good idea can lead to men dying face down in a trench. And it's almost like she's talking about these pursuits, which is particularly in that culture, in that time, predominantly there's pursuits of men. And, of course, Victor wants to pursue his idea. And she's almost poo-pooing it as if you pursuing all these things usually leads to pain and death and suffering. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's a very narrow view unless you bring in the biblical concept of counting the cost. right?
Yeah.
Is it worth pursuing some of these things? That's the framing story of the boat. We're trying to find this way to the Arctic Circle. We're trying to find a path through, and I'm going to push my men, or even they're going to lose their lives because this is important. It's like, well, okay. And the end of the movie, say, well, maybe this cost is not worth paying for what we don't even know.
Right.
Because there's no special pathway through there anyway. We know that now. But at the same time, we would say as Christians, there are plenty of times where there's a just fight that could cost myself and my fellows their lives, and it absolutely is worth paying. And so this story gives us a couple of examples. Victor's pursuits seem to bring nothing but misery and pain and death. The boat, the framing stories. Then a lesson is actually learned. Okay, I need to count the cost. I need to count the cost to my men. I need to count the cost to my soul. And maybe I need to turn around. And that, to me, that would be repentance, like in a base level as a Christian understanding. But what you could miss then, what I'd say, we can't receive that as the only way. Because then I think of a movie like Silence, where Martin Scorsese's film, where it's just recant. They're gonna torture you, so just recant Christ. That's okay. There's a point where I need to count the cost, and it is worth paying.
Yeah, some things are worth suffering for.
I would even say some wars, which was there have been just reasons to go to war, and just reasons for fathers and sons and people to lose their lives. Like, yeah, it's terrible, but it's worth the cost.
And this is so simple to break down for people. I struggle with people who are hard-headed here, because if I'm walking down the street and I see a young woman being assaulted by a man, I am going to attack that man. And I will make sure that, to the best of my ability, that she is protected. Now, I may lose my life in that process. He could have a gun. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to do what I can. I'll hit 911. I'll jump on top of it, whatever's got to be done. And not that I'm a tough guy. I'm just saying, like, men should be doing that sort of a thing. And it's an idea. Oh, the innocent should be protected. And so sometimes war is awful, but we have to do it. By the way, I wanted to ask you this. I only saw the movie once because I made the brilliant decision of watching The Black Phone. Anyway, I watched this once. In the end, does he ask for forgiveness?
He does.
Victor?
He does.
Yes.
There's an exchange of forgiveness between them, which again, I wish they'd had them have a few more conversations to make it feel earned.
Listen, it was a little ham-fisted, but it still got me in the feels. It did. It got me in the feels. I was like, oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And a mutual exchange. Mm-hmm. He asks for forgiveness. The creature seems to recognize that his rage was also something that had to be curbed, right? And sort of why he frees the boat, which, is whatever. It is what it is. It made sense after that scene, it made sense for him to do that. So there is a sense of freedom and forgiveness and I guess a deathbed repentance, which is something biblically we know is absolutely absolutely can be. Yeah.
I'll celebrate a deathbed confession 100%. That's celebrate.
And I think the idea, of course, was he heard his tale. He heard he heard the creature share his tale, and that brought him to. There's biblical precedent for that too. When confronted and told the story about Nathan going to David, let me tell you this story. You're the man. Mm-hmm. You're the monster, David. Right? That's David. David gets caught up in his own adultery and murder, and has to come to some forgiveness. So to have the monster show up and have that's not a bad rewrite. To have him express himself and have Victor recognize in the telling. I think if I remember the book accurately, the creature shows up. Victor's already related his tale and has expired. And so there is no reconciliation. There is no redemptive aspect. And I can't fault a guy like Del Toro trying to I want to add an element of redemption to this story. I want to add an element of forgiveness to this story. That we talk about whether a story is sort of life transcendent or life under the sun. That's kind of my shorthand. And I would say the original book is very much a life under the sun. It's the creature goes out, lights a fire to burn his creator's body, and he throws himself on it and dies, right? Because he's not Deadpool and Wolverine like he is in this version.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's not immortal. But he is able.
He did throw me, by the way. I should have factored that into my review. I'm taking off a half star for that.
But I could see somebody looking at a Life Under the Sun story and being like, no, I love this story, but it desperately needs some redemption. I mean, because that is what we would say as the Christian. We're like, that's the hope we want to bring. Yes, sometimes it can seem like life under the sun, but there is some forgiveness and a redemption and a new sunrise and freedom possible, which is kind of what all the notes of this movie, you know, the boat is freed, everybody's cheering,
Right.
monsters kind of walking into the sun. Now I'm remembering one of the first things when the creature is born, Victor opens up the slats, like the sun comes in and the creature's terrified of it. And he's like, no, it's okay. And so at the end, of course, he feels like there's been forgiveness exchanged and he's sort of walking into the sun and he's embracing the sunlight. I can see that. As of all the changes that it sort of exacerbated my hackles, that's the one where, okay, if he wanted to add that, if that had been the kind of the sum of change, like that I can't say that ultimately bothers me, because there were other changes. I want to throw it on my stack of changes I'm ranting about. But if that's the way you want it to go, to imbue Shelley's original story with a sense of forgiveness and redemption, as a Christian, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable shooting that.
No, I get you. But, you know, I will say this. I could be wrong here. Him walking off like that could set you up to follow this movie up with the found footage, the Frankenstein experiment, where they find Frankenstein's monster, a couple of dudes that have been researching, figure out where he's been living all these years, and they encounter him.
Oh,
If you
sure.
like found footage, you know, Frankenstein experiment, I think that's what it's called.
I don't think I've seen that one, but it sounds.
It's fun.
It could also leave Del Toro with the chance to have his creation show up in a later. He could do a sequel.
I remember more about Frankenstein experience than I do Black Phone 2, but whatever. It's fine.
Yes, let's nobody talk about that unless we do an episode just to excoriate it later.
Do an episode on that movie. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know if we've exhausted all of the topics because it's a big topic, but we've gone to some places I didn't expect, and even found a couple places where I could say some of the changes weren't so bad, and again, we're probably not as far apart as we may have thought at the outset, which is fun.
No, I think we both appreciate much of the same stuff, not all of it, and I think I wasn't bothered by some of his choices, and you were bothered by some of the choices, which is fair. Like, we can like or not like choices that a filmmaker makes. But I can tell you this, I think based on this conversation, I would amend my rating to make it a tad lower, just by us talking through it. Just how I think I have a better grasp on what I thought I might not have liked about it. Now I'm much more clear on what it is. That's the benefit of having conversations like this.
Yeah, and maybe I can lean off my absolute stale and confess that there are some, not just some aesthetic choices, but even some interaction choices between characters that make it for an interesting entry, even if one that instead of a souffle falling completely flat, maybe there were just a few ingredients. Maybe there's just some bites that just don't sit well in my stomach.
Not enough seasoning.
There you go. Well, as always, Joe, it's been a ton of fun. And
Thanks
I guess
for having me.
It'll be fascinating to see. I think that I've seen a lot of polarizing elements, so I'm wondering if people listen to us and they've been talking about it. I'm curious to see where people fall as this becomes a little more digested, as people maybe watch it a couple of times, what they really think. And hey, maybe some people vehemently disagree with us. Maybe they hate it for all the different reasons that I did and love it for reasons that you haven't mentioned. So hopefully we can hear from some of them in the comments and keep the conversation going. But until next time, which will probably not be Black Phone 2 with Joe, and for everyone else, until next time, keep engaging media from a godly perspective. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.